Hello and welcome to another workshop in the Community Innovation Challenge series, meant to be a repository of resources for everybody who is out there doing incredible projects, tiny to huge, anywhere out there, putting your minds together as a community and facing a challenge together. Thank you so much for joining us. My name is Chi Tam, your host as always. My pronouns are she and her, and I'm here with Gabriel Ferguson and Jean-Marie Chapeau. I've never actually asked you how to pronounce that.
Chapeau.
Perfect. So I'll ask them to introduce themselves later. But today I am calling in to acknowledge the land that I'm calling in from. I'm calling in from Toronto, which is Treaty 6 territory. It's part of the covenant that is called the Dish with One Spoon, which is fairly simple. It guides our behavior as community, and it predates colonial contact and refers to Lake Ontario as a beautiful resource that we all respect for one another. We keep it clean. We take not more than what we need. And that's an incredible community spirit that I think should still guide people's behavior on these lands today. And it's definitely an energy that we bring into our community projects. So there's much to be done for reparative actions that are very, very necessary towards Indigenous redress and struggle. And hopefully those among you who are most community minded will be willing to walk that walk with us. So hopefully the skills that you gain through the Community Innovation Challenge will help us all get closer. And that's really where I'm thinking, what I'm thinking about when I think about my land acknowledgement today. So today's topic is evaluation. So we come into these community projects and these big systemic problems with really great intentions, with a lot of excitement and enthusiasm. But I think we all stumble when, after everything is said and done, and everyone's a little bit tired, but also maybe a little bit exhausted sometimes, not just tired, to really get our heads together to debrief and think about what happened and what did we learn. And I think that more expansively, if we all agree, is what evaluation can be. But we also acknowledge that on the practical side of things, a lot of grants ask you to have very particular formats, to submit final reports about your project, to describe it in very particular ways that sometimes seem really onerous. And we hope that this resource can address both ends of that spectrum for you and give a space for us to discuss all of the ranges of how we can approach evaluation in between that, while still giving you the practical, pragmatic, advice in terms of how to do this task of evaluation. So I am joined by people that are way more experienced than I am on the topic, and I'll let them introduce themselves to you all right now. I'll hand it over to Jean-Marie.
I am very excited to be with you today. So I'm Jean-Marie Chapeau. I'm the Consulting Director Evaluating Impact at Tamarack Institute, on who are partner we are partner on this beautiful project. And before joining Tamarack a few months ago, I've been involved with United Way Greater Montreal, and I worked a lot on developing programs to help agencies to develop their own evaluation capacity. So I'm really passionate by how to bring people and organizations in an evaluative mindset, but in a very, very simple way.
Amazing. Thank you so much for bringing your knowledge and expertise to this space with us. Gabriel, do you want to introduce yourself to everyone?
Yes, I'm Gabe Ferguson, and I'm with the Rural Ontario Institute, and I'm the Leadership Programs Director there. So I get involved in programs from youth to executive leadership programs. And in that work, we often see the need for storytelling and the need to evaluate, what it is we're doing. And so this topic is near and dear to my heart also. And I would say that, unlike Jean-Marie, I don't necessarily have all that expertise, formal expertise in evaluation. I'm coming at it from the other angle where I can tell you it pays. It pays to do this right because it allows you to be successful beyond your project. And so I'm going to share some of those stories as we move along through here as well. So thanks for letting me be here, and Rural Ontario Institute is very, very happy to be working on the CIC projects and that with such great collaborators. Thank you both.
Thank you again for being part of this series. Okay, so let's get to it. I think let's start the session with maybe some presentation slides that help us frame the conversation, and some things that we already know about how we can think about evaluation and approach it. So I'm going to hand it over now to Jean-Marie, who I think will be able to share screen, and I will mute myself as well.
Okay, so last week we had a great conversation with Gabrielle about evaluation, and it inspired me a lot in how to present the subject today. First, I would like to say that in order to evaluate, you don't need to be an expert. So that's the good news, I would say. What I like to say is that in our everyday life, we always evaluate. Okay, so for example, in a few weeks, it's my mother's birthday. I'm gonna organize a birthday surprise party, and after this, I will really want to know if it went well, if she was happy, if the people invited were happy, if I should do the same or slightly differently next time. So I'm going to evaluate the event and what I organized for her. So this is just an example, crazy example, not so crazy, it's an example, but just to show you that we always evaluate. So in order to be to move forward on our subject, I would like to share with you four mindsets that I think it's important to keep and to develop when you are doing evaluation. They are really inspired by our own life. Can you see the slide, or is it completely black?
At the moment, it's black for me.
Okay, so
oh,
okay.
No, it's clear now.
Okay, so for a very important mindset, you will see it's very simple: curiosity, learning appetite, flexibility, and ownership. I'm going to start with ownership. We do evaluation for us, for our community, for our project. We should always think about evaluation in connection with our own interests. So that's the first point. So the ownership of evaluation is important. I do evaluation not for my funder, not for anyone else, but for my community and for my project. And if it helps me to get funds and to report, it's okay and it's good. But it is for our own purpose. You see, that's the ownership dimension. Curiosity also is very important. Asking ourselves questions all the time, it is curiosity. It's the same in the context of an innovative project in a community or in volunteer project. We have to be curious in order to know if it works, what we can improve, if people are changing after being helped by our project. So the learning appetite is connected to the curiosity. It's important to improve what we do in a continuous base. So being in a learning mindset can help you to improve what we do and to work with a lot of purpose and a lot of dedication to our community. And flexibility is also very important. As I said, you don't need to be an expert to do evaluation. There is a huge part of the evaluation sector or system that can be done in a very flexible, agile way and flexible way. And you can create your methodology, you can adapt, you can make mistakes and start from zero. You have to be flexible when you do an evaluation. What do you think about that, Gabriella?
Well, I agree. I really love this diagram, and I like the way that you're positioning it, because what I found when I'm doing anything that has to do with evaluation is, I don't know if you've heard that expression, right? But beginning with the end in mind, right? And so what I find is, if you're going to evaluate something, right, you do have to come in with that open mind. And you have to ask the question right at the start, And this is where, you mentioned stuff at the beginning about, gosh, you're so tired, you've done your project, you're exhausted, and now you're thinking about evaluation. I would turn that on its head. I would turn that on its head and look at these 4 boxes and say, okay, I haven't begun my project. I've got an idea, I've got energy, and I want to invite other people to my party. That's my favorite expression. So how do I do that? And what is it we're trying to do again? Because if we can define, right, if we can define what it is we're passionate about and what it is we're dreaming of doing or how we want to make a difference, which I think is all about curiosity and ownership, right? If I want to make a difference, I haven't quite figured out what that difference is yet, but I'm curious about maybe this area, and I want other people to think about it with me and define what success looks like. And when we do that, then we start going, okay, well, if we know what success looks like, how do we tell if we get there? What does it mean?
I totally agree. And I want to emphasize a thing that Jean-Marie had mentioned in passing and explaining one of the element around ownership, but that's so key to be doing evaluation for yourself and your community first as your, that's coming from a place of authenticity. And that allows you to be honest with yourself to a level that would be very different if you felt like you were just being forced to go through the motions just because a funder is forcing you to. And it's actually, I would say, don't hesitate to literally save different versions of your debrief. Save one that is fully true to yourself and is unedited, unfiltered, and then consider maybe refining that a little bit and then submitting different versions for different audiences about what your lesson has been learned. That's a very literal way that you can interpret how to do that.
Mm-hmm. Good. I would like to start from what Gabrielle said about beginning with the end in mind. I have prepared this slide that. For me, these are the 5 questions or the 5 steps to keep in mind when you start an evaluation. So we are going into a little more technical dimension right now, but you are right, Gabrielle. Defining the change is our first step. So the first question that we should ask ourselves when we start a project, a small project or a bigger project, is what do we want to change? So what is our final impact? What is the final impact that we want to reach with this project, and how we want to contribute it? So that's the first question. On if it's possible, sometimes it is not possible, but if it's possible, what is our level of success? So what, how will we tell to each other that we have succeeded at the end of the project or in 5 years? And asking yourself this question is very helpful for you in order to calibrate your evaluation, but it's also very, very helpful for your stakeholders, for the funders, obviously, and for anyone who is interested in your project, because you're able to say, okay, this is what I want to transform, and this is my level of success. If I reach this target, it's fine. It shows that my project was relevant. If I don't reach this target, okay, what did I learn, and how can I improve for a next loop, in fact? So after in this first step also, there is a very important question, and you talked about it, is what do we want to learn? So what do I want to learn all along my project? It's another very important question, especially if you are working on an innovative project, because you are trying to have an impact in a social dimension of your community, but you are also developing a new way of working. So you want to learn about what you have developed, and if it works, and is it efficient, and how you can adapt all along the time. So this is another question very important for this first step of defining the change. And after, there are some other steps, and I can continue a little bit. So the second step is designing your evaluation questions. So what question do you ask yourselves in order to assess your progress, to evaluate your project? Do you want to know how many people will reach how many people you will reach, or do you want to identify the changes in the life of these people that you want to reach, or do you want to see if your community has changed in terms of green spaces or transportation or any kind of impact that you want to have. After designing your question, and I can go back to the question after, but after designing the question, you have to think about your indicators. So what is the measure that you will use? The number of people who will answer yes to a question at the end of your activity about the way they feel, the way this activity change their life or their perception on something, or their skills on something. So you will have to think about a very few numbers of indicators, but they are really connected to your evaluation question. After that, you have to think about how you will collect data. If you are leading a little project, you don't have so much resources to do polls, surveys, longitudinal surveys. So you can find very simple ways to collect data with, for example, online surveys or face-to-face surveys with the people you reach with your project. And after, a very, very important step is analyzing and sharing your results in a very simple and comprehensive and clear way in your community and to your stakeholders and partners.
You know, it's so funny, Jean-Marie, as you speak about this, like it can sound, the language of evaluation, right? It can sound complex. It can sound intimidating, right? We talk about things like analyzing and data and indicators, and those words to a lot of us who aren't used to that language can be kind of intimidating. And you know, I find in evaluation it's really about making it real, right? Like what is the story? What are you trying to tell, and what are the questions you're going to ask after this? Like, what are you going to ask each other? Like, would we do it that way again the next time or not? And then you're sitting, you know, with your coffee in hand and you're going, gosh, you know, maybe if we had done it this way. But if you didn't collect information, then it's hard to know whether you should have done it the other way or not, right? So it's thinking about what are the questions you might ask at the end that you need to collect information about now as we're doing the journey. Like as we're having the journey, who do we need to talk to? What are the stories we need to collect? And can we find those indicators, right? So what's the indicator along the way? And it doesn't have to just be the last question you ask. So what did you think about the project? Oh yeah, it was pretty good. Well, that's one indicator. But are there stops along the journey where you can be asking a question about what did you think about this piece as a volunteer? How did you feel about the way that we provided you information? You know, as a builder in this project, how did you feel about the scoping? You know, all these different things where you can be collecting information along the way. I know that it's been really helpful to me in projects as opposed to waiting to the end and just asking one big question.
The point about data and stories is very important. When we talk about data here, it's a very wide understanding of what a data is. There is no stories without data, or no data without stories. So especially in a community innovation project, it's very important to mix both. So having some quantitative data about the appreciation of the efficiency of a project or the change that people can testify about something, but having these stories of experience of the people around your project in order to illustrate the data that you collect is very important. And the live live and people with live and living experience are the best evaluators in your community. The stories that they can share about your project are as precious as the numbers that you are going to collect in your evaluation.
And I want to make a comment that what you two have just pointed out is a key decision point where that has to do with power. This is actually one of the most active elements of being the organizer of a community project, where you have an opportunity to distribute power and choose who you want to be accountable to. Because the reality is that whoever is providing the funding and money will have disproportionate amount of influence and power over your community project. And that is just a reality that you might as well explicitly say out loud so that you can deal with it and acknowledge it in your design. Because a lot of people will sort of pretend like this power dynamic doesn't happen. And without that sort of active thinking about it, slowly decisions in your evaluation, in the way you tell the story about who you worked with and why you came together, it slightly shifts. It shifts from, for example, oh, we handed out 100 portions today from our food program. That was emergency food distribution and grocery support. And that could look really different when in fact you're accountable to the folks who are receiving the grocery support. And on their end, what you would report would be very different. It would be like, oh, the lineup was really disorganized. There was sort of mishandling of information from one group of seniors who didn't get the same amount of information to another group. The type of details and the things you would even think to report and track are so different. So be honest with yourself and have that brutal conversation with your funders if you trust them, but also just in and amongst yourself as a community. I think that's actually key and is actually a really great thing that evaluation lets you sort of involve the community in a really authentic way.
Oh, I just love that. I love the way that you put that. It is so important. Like, your advisory group to your project, however formal or informal that is, making sure that you have representation on that will help you choose your indicators, choose you the questions to ask. So, as you say, organize. We go out there, we organize these projects, and we forget. I mean, it sounds funny when you say it, but I can remember organizing a youth leadership program. We had an advisory committee that had no youth on it. Excuse me? Excuse me? That doesn't even make sense, right? So some of the simplest things we kind of need to go smack, and then kind of take another look. Yeah, I love the comment.
Okay.
I have a question for you guys. Oh, please go ahead.
Okay, so very quickly, 2 ideas about what we just said. The question of power, you are completely right. In my own experience, helping community organizations to develop evaluation skills, this was a big point to just remind people in the organizations that by mastering your evaluation process, by deciding what you want to show, how you will show it, you really rebalance the power between you and your funders. And it's a very important. If you don't do that, if you don't evaluate, if you don't want to know if what you are doing has an impact, some other people will do it, and you don't want that. You want to be autonomous in the way you show what are your impacts, and you are the best actor, you are the best organization or a group of people to talk about the impact of what you are doing. About the participation of youth, your example, Gabrielle, I think it's another very important point. I said it earlier, but the best people who can help on an evaluation process are the people with living experience that you are helping. So of course, in a youth project, you should have youth on board, especially in the evaluation, because people with living experience can really help you to find the best indicators and the best ways to talk about the impact and to identify the impact of your project.
And I think like the activity or the task of evaluation in this particular language is often the easiest target for grassroots groups that we work with, because we work with such a huge range of, community initiatives that are very very political and radical and grassroots, and have very strong beliefs about whether or not they want to participate in corporate-like behavior, which they deem evaluation and impact measurement to be. And I find that criticism, while is extremely fair, I have also seen a lot of groups throw the baby out with the bathwater. So it doesn't matter if you don't want to conform to, the big corporate ideas of what impact measurement could be in qualitative and quantitative research. You can definitely abandon the language, make it more accessible, but still there is this need to be thoughtful about whether or not the thing you did actually helped the people you intended to help, and whether or not those people genuinely thought it was helpful, because their opinion matters the most. And I think that's exactly the point you guys got to. So I would say, even if you think that this is completely irrelevant to you, everything that we're talking about, it actually is. You may not call it the same name. So I'm actually going to spin that a little bit on the angle, because I'm really curious to hear your advice on how do you make evaluation a part of the project in a way that doesn't make it more work? Because that's something we hear groups complain about a lot as they go through community project work. It's like, oh, I feel like this is just a make work project, and there's a whole other project after the actual project that feels like even more emotional work than actually conducting the event or whatever it is they've pulled off. So what are some strategies that they can implement right from the get-go, or as part of running the program, that will make this not feel like extra work?
Can I start, or do you want to start, Gabrielle? I start. Okay, three very important points about that. First, first way to keep it simple and to make sure that evaluation is not a burden above what you are doing. The first key point is to think about evaluation when you are at the early stage of your planning or development of your project. In fact, you can ask yourself, what do we want to change? What do we want to learn? So keeping in mind these questions since the beginning of your project is very important. Yes, it's a very important step. Second, there is in your project, there are some different activities where you are going to gather stakeholders or people you serve. All these activities, for example, community meeting, a party in a park, a training session with people you reach. All these activities are opportunities to do evaluation, to ask for stories, to ask for answers about how people are feeling about the project and how their life is changing. So use any kind of activities that is already planned in your action plan to do evaluation, in order not to add activities. And also, my third point is communicating and celebrating the results is very important. So there are some fun ways to talk about evaluation and to communicate about your results and your learnings. Learning is a key word also. If we don't want to be to stick too much to the technical dimension of evaluation, we should think about learnings. There are some fun activities that you can do to share in your community what are your learnings and your impact. So you can make these activities opportunities to continue to gather and to engage and to mobilize people around your project by sharing your main learnings to the community. So these are 3 examples that I can share with you.
And I would pick up on some of those things, Jean-Marie, and just say them maybe just a little bit different words. And to me, good evaluation, making good evaluation is really about respect. It really has a lot to do with respecting who it is you're asking for information and how you're using that information. So I think a big part of it is pre-planning. So who is it we're going to be talking to and how will we be engaging them? And that speaks, Jean-Marie, to your comments about there are going to be different activities that you're doing and there's going to be different audiences. And so when we meet with them, how well we use that time efficiently? How well, rather than having to go back to them again, can we pre-plan ahead of that activity and say, here's the way in which we can use your time to collect information. And the information that you collect, it needs to be, and I want to be careful with my language here a bit, but it needs to be personal. And what I mean by that is meaningful, okay? I don't mean collect personal information. I mean, make it meaningful and something that is coming from the heart, something that is a reason why I would answer this question. Why would I be asked that question? It needs to be relevant to me. And why would I want to answer it? What difference would it make? Why would I want people to know how I feel about this? And we're going to have all kinds of ages and we're going to have all kinds of people from different backgrounds. So think of really interesting ways of doing that. Remember you were saying about making it fun. And I mean, when you've got kids, right? And you've got bean bags or balls or ribbons or whatever, right? And did you have fun doing this activity? Throw a red ball here, throw a green ball there, throw a yellow ball there, and then count the number of balls. That's data. That's data, that's information, that's collecting. And it's done in an active way and you can video it and you can take a picture of it. You can show it, you can tell it and it means something. And it's a way where young people, little people who maybe can't express what they're feeling another way could express it through colors or could express it in another way. And so finding the easy ways to do it, the quick way, the quick wins, quick poll, quick color, quick picture, whatever. So those are the things that give immediate feedback in the moment, on the journey, because it motivates the next evaluation step, which is the detailed evaluation. And that evaluation takes more time. And you're not going to ask everyone to do it. But you do want to ask enough of your representatives of the different parts of your community, of your project, to engage in those more in-depth evaluation. And they should be part of designing the questions. What is it you want? What is it you want to tell people? What is it you think we should evaluate? Gosh, it makes your job a lot easier at the start when you're trying to figure out what questions to ask and who to involve. Boy, it makes it a heck of a lot easier. Ask the people who you want to know from. So those would be
I love that. Don't make your job harder than it is. People already have the answers. And again, a great way to distribute power and knowledge in the process.
Maybe I would just add something. In any community, there are people who are key informants. So people that can observe some changes that are related to what you to your project. So don't hesitate to find these people, a shop owner, a postman, for example, or depending on your project. But these are just examples. So there are some. very often the data that the data you need is already existing somewhere in your community. So that's another way to facilitate the evaluation process.
I'm going to emphasize one additional element of this, which you can interpret the rationale for, again, why you should do evaluation. If I was trying to pitch it to you, and if you want to take this language literally and pitch it to the community, it's the more you know, then the more data you own as a community, the more, again, autonomy, like Jean-Marie had said, you have. So when you were advocating to bigger systemic issues, when you were advocating for new policies, when you were advocating that your project should continue, when you're trying to basically make your case that this is necessary, this is what you will draw from. And whether you think of it as a formal evaluation process or not, like having that kind of control over your data, so key. Otherwise, you can't point to anything to say that you really know in a very credible way. So I am curious now to turn to what would be the big misunderstandings that you guys have seen about evaluative processes that you've come across in the projects that you've supported. Because we've definitely seen some very interesting ones based on people just trying to do projects for the first time, no matter what age. And I'm curious what you guys have seen.
I can start, or Gabriele? Okay, I start. The first one we already mentioned it, so I will go to the second one. It's about expertise on the first. The big misunderstanding is considering evaluation as an expert work or as a completely separated expert work that we can do and we can handle in a community in an easy way. Evaluation is a science, that's sure. There are some methods, very rigorous methods to evaluate, but we are not obliged to use these expensive and scientific methods to collect learnings on the information about our impacts. It is important to know what the limits of our approach is or are in terms of rigor and in terms of technical dimensions, but we don't always need evaluators to do an evaluation of our work in a community. And it's important to keep that in mind, because sometimes we are in the middle. We say, okay, we can't afford to have an external evaluator. We can do it ourselves, but we try to use the same methods as a researcher or an evaluator, and it's becoming very overwhelming for a few group of people. So just step back a little bit and reset your understanding of what you are doing, asking yourself, can we do it in a simple way? What is our main questions? So go back on what we said at the beginning of the meeting, and reset the way you see the thing. So the overwhelming dimension of evaluation and the expertise dimension of evaluation is one of these understandings, I would say.
Gabe, what do you see out there?
I would say there's two really big things that I find. And the first part is evaluation happens at the start, not at the beginning. Okay? So you absolutely need to think about your evaluation at the beginning. And that means before you can evaluate, you have to figure out what do you want to do? What do you want to change? Why are we here? What does success look like? What does success look like? And you know what? You don't have to get it right. That's the beauty of evaluation, is you don't have to be right. You can say, this is what we think success looks like. And as you collect your stories and as you do your evaluation, which is really monitoring and checking in and measuring that journey as you go along, you can change what success looks like. So success used to be the number of meals we served. That was what success was. And as that number goes up, man, we nailed it. And then we started talking to people and we started collecting some data, and we realized actually, you know what, it isn't as much about the number of meals as it is about that they're healthy and that people can access them and that they feel welcomed and warm and comfortable. Those are the things that are success. Wow, that's a whole different story. And we're going to capture that story in a very different way than we captured the number of meals. So that's, I guess, part of it is start at the beginning. Evaluation starts at the start and it continues along the journey, and it can evolve. So that's one piece. And the other piece I would say that people often don't ask is we do think about success in terms of what we will change and how that will look like. But we often don't ask the question about, so if we aren't here, if things don't change, if we don't do this project, what will that look like? Sometimes that helps you figure out what success looks like. So if you can figure out what doesn't change, what stays the same, what gets worse, sometimes that's a great way to figure out what you should be measuring and what might change and the questions you need to ask. If you're feeling like things aren't going to change, what does that mean? And so who do you need to talk to about making that change? So I'd say those were the two things for me that really opened my eyes when I started talking about evaluation. Because Jean-Marie, I definitely was one of those people going, oh my goodness, this is so much work and I don't know how to do it. And I really, yeah, okay, I did some research, but I knew what it took to do that research. So breaking it down into the pieces just, I think, makes it so much easier and so much more welcoming. And it means that we can all do it. It means we can all do it, and we can all have the power to tell our story and tell it from a lot of different angles. Because you need a lot of different angles. None of these things happen alone. They don't happen with just one funder, just one volunteer, just one partner. We need to tell the story from all kinds of different angles.
Yeah, definitely. Maybe another misunderstanding is when organizations or people say, what we do cannot be evaluated. We can't evaluate what we do because it's complex, because we are doing advocacy, for example. In fact, that's not true. You can learn and evaluate from any kind of project. If we take the example of advocacy groups, for example, the impact that you would like that you want to have in your community could be, for example, a policy change in your municipality or at any government level. If this policy actually changes, so this is your success, and you are able to say, okay, our contribution to this policy change has been this, and this is our impact. This is the result of some actions that we organized, and we are confident to say that our contribution was this. So everything can be evaluated, in fact.
Yes, it's often true when people take on environmental projects, right? Or health or food security, things like these. And they take a long time. That end goal, the thing that everybody wants to wave the banner about, cleaning the river or, reducing climate change, all these different things, they take a long time. They can take a long time. But there are measures along the way. There is impact along the way.
Mm.
I so agree with all of these. And I think the misunderstanding that I would add is this idea that you have to have had it all planned out, and that you might as well give up. And not try to do any evaluation because you forgot to check in with people or add in any questions in. So it's kind of the other end of the spectrum as well. If you're faking it till you make it and you have no idea what you're doing and you just went ahead and started your project just to see what would happen, great, good for you. And maybe just ask one question. Maybe just ask your project team, hey, how is everyone feeling? And maybe that's where you start. And if you and you will naturally, I think, develop a desire within yourself to go, oh darn, I wish we had asked that, or oh darn, I just wish we had put some post-it notes out and just left an open space for people to reflect or something like that, because you'll be, the incredible reward of doing community programming and projects is, whether they fail or succeed, the relationships that you got and the thrill of actually trying to do something with your own hands and with your own brains for once. So I'm sure, when you try to attempt it again, you will want to get more sophisticated in doing this. So I think there's also the other spectrum of misunderstanding. If you don't know all the answers and don't know how to evaluate, you are also allowed to, just fudge it and try your best and get better over time. So please don't let that stop you.
Absolutely. Absolutely. That brought up like a great question, right? And who do you know now that you didn't know before? I mean, it's such a great question to ask as evaluation. I mean, so many of these projects are about networking. Who do you know now that you didn't know before you started this? And map that out. Wow. It's just stellar to see what happened and how many people, again, get invited to the party, right? It's just...
One great question to ask if you literally forgot to design any elements of evaluation into your project is to send out an invitation to do another project with all of the people you collaborated with. And if people don't respond, that's an evaluation of you. And so some things are inherent, there will be ways that you will get feedback regardless, even and especially when you don't hear from people. That's the biggest feedback of all. And you should be very deeply curious about that. Don't let that go. Be very, very curious why you're not hearing back from people. I personally, I know that there is an approach to evaluation or a scientific method that deliberately seeks out the worst case scenario or deliberately seeks out the failures and the version of the story that really maximizes and shines the brightest spotlight on all of the things that didn't go well during your project. And it's excruciating to go through for your own ego sometimes, but after you go through that exercise, I think it actually highlights your successes even more. And if you're able to tell the story like that, as like here is all of the things that went wrong and all of the potential things that could have gone even more wrong that we discovered later on, but still here is what we pulled through, your story becomes stronger. And actually, I feel like you, on reflection, or me personally, I have felt even more resilient and more awed by what we did pull off by using that method. So sometimes if you're sort of not sure what to look for, maybe deliberately go look for the version of the story that is the worst. You can keep it to yourself, but I would encourage you to try and share it. And I think you'll learn a lot from it.
That's a very cool exercise to do collectively, actually. So in French, we call that the sabotage method. So I don't know if it's the same in English, but it's very, very helpful, especially for when you organize an event or very short-term and very precise activity. It's very helpful. No, in fact, you can use to any kind of project, but it's really, really helpful. And it helps also to plan and to design your project. It's not only an evaluation tool, it's a planning tool also. Very, very interesting.
That's so fascinating. I love, I'm going to call it that from now on, the sabotage method. I think I prefer that name. Yeah, because, there is a tendency to want to, prove that you were successful, like just desperate to be a successful project regardless. And I will say, to plug in the last 5 minutes, that is not what the Community Innovation Challenge is all about. Again, just to emphasize, this partnership that we've pulled together from all these incredible organizations and that is funded currently from EDGE is really a way for you to get your feet wet for the first time. If you've never put together a community project, that's totally fine. Talk to us. If you've never thought of yourself as a social entrepreneur, you are so welcome in this space. Come talk to us. And we really just want to help you think through the beginning steps of this. So you do not have to have all the answers right. And we want to give you a chance to go out there and make a big mistake, like fail as fast and hard as you can, try and do something, and just try and be accountable and responsible as you go along. And we will support you in doing that. That is what the CIC challenge is all about. We will back you up with resources, with networks. I will introduce you personally to the people on this call and all of the other lovely folks who are putting this series together to support you in your project. So please do reach out to us. Links, as usual, will follow up to all the registrants and everybody who streams this later on. You'll find it in our YouTube descriptions. You'll find it in the Whova descriptions as well. So I am going to close the session by giving a big thank you to everyone for putting this together, either on screen or behind the screen. And if you're watching this video much later on, all three of us wish you all the success and luck with whatever project it is you're working on.
Thank you very much, and good luck, everyone.
Thank you. Thank you, Chi. As always, great discussion. I really enjoyed it. Thanks, everyone, and good luck with your projects.
Bye-bye.